All right, so um, you think you've stumbled onto a podcast hosted by robots.
Happens to the best of us, right?
It really does. We've been getting some, well, interesting observations about this podcast, RoboCast,
Mm-hmm.
our listeners. They're picking up on some, let's just say, suspicious speech patterns.
Yeah, our ears are getting pretty good at this, huh?
They really are. Okay, so today's deep dive, we're talking AI fingerprints.
Yeah.
How can we tell if it's a bot behind the mic?
And what's so fascinating is it really is getting harder, isn't it? Our brains are getting so finely tuned to these artificial voices. Like you were saying, you're noticing these phrases that pop up. And I mean, on the surface, they seem normal enough, but...
They're just a little too perfect.
Exactly.
Like when someone tells you to smile at a party,
Oh, yeah.
but they say it with zero energy. It's that kind of vibe.
Like a robot trying to blend in.
You mentioned that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Mm.
As a prime example.
Mm-hmm.
What's so robotic about that one?
Well, on the surface, it seems like a totally normal thing to say, right?
Huh?
But it's like it's trying to be engaging a little too hard.
Hmm.
And when you hear it again and again, it starts to sound forced. Like the AI doesn't really get the context.
It's like a stand-up comedian who keeps repeating their best joke.
Right. You got to laugh the first time, but now it's just...
Robotic.
Exactly.
So, awkward repetition check. What else?
Well, this actually ties into another AI fingerprint you noticed. Those weird shifts in who's leading the conversation.
Oh, yeah, like they're reading from a script and suddenly switch places or something?
Right. Think about how humans talk. We interrupt, we riff off each other, we pause, we jump in.
We have our own rhythms.
Yes. And AI hasn't quite figured that out yet.
It's like they're suddenly swapping scripts mid-conversation.
Hmm.
Okay, but, and maybe this is me being too generous, couldn't a really in-sync human-host duo also finish each other's sentences sometimes?
Oh, absolutely. But, with humans, there's this underlying spontaneity. We pick up on these subtle cues without even realizing it.
Like body language, tone of voice.
Exactly. With AI, even if the thoughts connect, it can feel like one personality just stops and another one picks up.
Interesting.
Impressive, sure, but it doesn't have that same human touch.
Right. It's missing that dot spark.
Exactly.
Now, you also pointed out this mind-melding thing in RoboCast, especially toward the end of episodes. Like, how do they do that?
That, my friend, is the AI showing off a bit.
Okay.
They're trained on mountains of data, right? Text, code, you name it. So they learn to anticipate what comes next in a sequence.
So it can seem like one host is reading the other one's mind.
Precisely.
Okay, I have to admit, it's pretty impressive, but also a little creepy.
It can be both.
Okay, last AI fingerprint. And this one really threw me. The phrase, "it's about." Why does that scream robot?
Because language is about so much more than just spitting out information, right? It's style, it's personality.
It's what makes us human.
Right. AI tends to default to, let's say, functional language. And it's about is a very functional phrase.
It's a very straightforward way to introduce a topic. So after listening to all of this, should we be suspicious of every podcast out there now?
Not at all. But it is
Yeah.
a good reminder to, really listen.
Pay attention.
Yeah. Be aware of those subtle cues. Think of it as a fun game.
Spot the robot. And yeah, maybe this whole thing makes us appreciate real human conversation even more. Glitches and all, right?
Absolutely.
Who knew that something as simple as "that's the million-dollar question" could be so revealing? It really makes you think, though. If AI can already mimic us this well, what will our podcast sound like in a few years?